Killing about those. Thanks again for tuning into yet another video. I am attempting to install the TCMT bracket, which is this one that you can see right here. Now you can see the one over there. This is the Dominator one. Completely different. This one sits about 3 inches further out. So there's a few reasons, because the fairing is also completely different. Everything's completely different. So you guys can see this thing is built like a tank. The Dominator is more lightweight, more, I guess, engineered. I guess you could say that. Completely different bracket. Look at this. This thing sits. This is just the front of the neck, and then you still have the actual bracket, which is this piece over here. So all in all, this is how long the TCMT bracket is. All right, this one over here, this one's the Dominator bracket, so a lot shorter. All right, so I have a ton of wires. Let's look at how this thing mounts. All right, completely different from the Dominator. This mounts where your brake lines mount. So like I said, I have a ton of wires here. I have an amp, I have an LP6, I have S1s, I have a bunch of stuff here. A ton of wires. So this is where the bracket itself. So the way I'm mounting it, I'm doing one bracket at a time. So this is the TCMT bracket. You guys can see right over here. There it is right there, right? Huge, massive bracket. So this one actually mounts, like I said, to where your brake lines are. So these are the brake lines. Of course, this goes to your ABS, and then, you know, you guys get the jazz, right? So these route over here underneath the fuel tank. So you have to remove this clip that holds the brake lines. This is where the Dominator bracket was rubbing up against my brake lines. So luckily they did not leak, or else that would have been a massive repair. So this one, I mean, I can't show you guys, but you guys can see right there. All right, let's see if the camera picks it up. Like I said, I have a ton of wires. So that's where that mounts. All right, so that's your secondary mounting point, is that brake line clip on your bike, on your neck. All right, so like I said, I have a ton of wires. I don't know if this is gonna work. So we're mounting one side at a time. All right, so let's go ahead and tighten this out a little bit more, and then we'll add the neck, and then we'll put on the other side. So this is the first time installing the TCMT bracket, and I believe this would be the easiest way to do it, because I just have so many wires. This might be different for you guys, of course. So let's go ahead and tighten this clip down. You guys can see that I'm no longer using this clip. I just don't think it'll fit. Could it? Or maybe we could put it underneath, like slide that underneath, and then have that sit on top. Could that work? I think that might work if you really want to put this back on there. Alright, so you guys can see we got that in there. Alright, so this is where, of course, the is the camera picking it up? Can you guys see it? I don't know if you guys can see it from right here. Maybe right here, but this is where, of course, your brake line. I was able to fit the clip underneath of the brake line, so it fits. It is pinching the that retainer clip, whatever you call it. It's a very tight fit, but it does fit. So you guys can see that's where it mounts, and of course you'll have to line up your fuel tank bolt like so. The next part, of course, is to grab the neck and then put that in there like so. So we'll slide that in there, grab the other piece, and then clamp everything down. So this goes like this. We'll clamp everything down, and then we'll put the bolt through the neck of the bike. That way we could line them up both at the same time. So let me go ahead and bolt this together. Since I don't have the tripod, I'll bolt this together, and then we'll leave everything loose, and then we'll attempt to line up these holes and see how the bracket mounts. Alright, so we mounted the bracket. Parts are still loose, but man, this thing is tight. This thing is very tight. The parts are, like I said, the parts are supposedly still loose, but we already have contact on the frame up here. The neck of the neck is already contacting the clamp, so we can't even tighten that even more. And then you can see the spacing here. We're talking about, I'd say like 1/2 inch. But I mean, once we start bolting this down, of course, this is going to start to pinch the actual bracket. I mean, like I said, we have a lot of contact there. I like that we have space between the eyelets of the fuel tank and the actual mounting area of the fuel tank. You can see there's a huge space. I'd say it's about 1 inch. So, you know, if you're worried about scratching up your paint, this bracket's, it's not going to do that. You have a ton of space. Look at that, I can actually fit my finger inside that gap. I don't know if the bracket's gonna move. We're gonna have to see, you know, just put some miles on it and see how the actual bracket handles. But I might have to loosen the fuel tank bolt to kind of get full contact with these parts, because you can see there's still a lot of play here. But I haven't bolted anything down, but this is just stuff that I'm noticing. You know, you have a lot of contact here. You can see that. You know, it's up against, I mean, it's literally right on the frame. You can see the Dominator, what it did to my frame down here. Right down there, you see, it was rubbing up against the frame, so it scratched off all the paint. This one's going to do the same thing. It's going to scratch up all the paint, but on this spot, in this area. So you could actually see there's just, it's full contact on the frame. So this is the TCMT bracket. I don't know why we have this bolt here. I don't know why we have this spacer. I don't know if that goes down there, but if I leave that in there, because there's no instructions, of course. If I leave that in there, then I won't be able to pinch these bolts onto the frame, and then it's going to be loose like this. And we definitely don't want that. So I'm gonna leave this spacer out. I don't know what it's for though. So I'm gonna bolt that up. We're gonna grab the fairing, and then we're gonna fit it on there. I still have to remove the Dominator lower bracket. This thing never really sat properly. But let's go ahead and hold the these, you know, side by side. You can see how much more. We're talking like an extra 3 inches. So I don't know if I'm gonna like the way it sits with this bracket. I'm not entirely sure if I'm gonna like the way it sits, because it is gonna sit about 3 inches away from the fuel tank. We'll see how it looks. Maybe the TCMT fairing is slightly longer. Hopefully it's slightly longer. You can see it also sits a few inches taller as well. So it sits about, I'd say it sits about 2 inches higher and about 3 inches further away from the bike. It's also heavier, you know, weighing it against my Dominator. It's also heavier as well. So alright, so we're working on the bottom bracket. You would have to remove, I guess you could probably use a wrench, but I think you'll eventually have to use the ratchet just to make stuff easier. So of course this is, I believe, a 9/16 for the engine mount, or whatever this is. I don't know what this is. Is this just a bracket? I don't know. I'm pretty sure the engine mount. Yeah, the upper engine mount is up there. So alright, so we mounted the fairing. You guys can see this thing sits extremely high, higher than my Dominator. So I mean, I've seen images where the fairing really sits this high. I couldn't run the 4-inch speakers anymore. Just there was no clearance for the speakers. I would have to change the orientation, or I would have to change something, but there was just no way for me to keep the 4-inch speakers. I really wanted to keep them, but looks like I'm gonna have to just rely on the 6.5 that I'm installing in this one. So you guys can see, of course, everything's still loose. We mounted the bracket. Here are the bolts. I am using a LP6 bracket that's still on the other fairing, so I'm just, like I said, I'm just fitting it. You guys can see it's all dusty down here. because I had to trim some of the inner fairing, because I was having my lower clamp was interfering with the bottom of the fairing. For some reason it was just this side, so I had to trim, you know, about 1/2 inch on both sides, 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here, so I could get the clearance for my forks. So that's the next step, is to mount this, see where it sits. Like I said, the fairing is still loose, so we'll see where it sits. Let's put in these bolts. I don't know if these are the OEM ones. I don't think these are the OEM ones. I think these are the Dominator ones. So let's go ahead and put those in there. And like I said, everything's still loose. Alright, we'll try and put those in there. And this is just the, you know, just to see how it fits. It's just, I'm not digging the way it sits on the bike. It sits high. So then that kind of makes me wonder, well, how the lower's gonna fit. Right, so it's the next day. I already went ahead and I modified this lower bracket, of course. I made the holes a little bit wider so I could slide this bracket all the way to the back, so I could buy that real estate between the fork bracket, the triple tree, and this lower piece. I also went ahead and I trimmed the mounting hole. So instead of having 2 holes, you only have 1 hole to mount. Alright, so then basically you would install the fairing loose. It's still loose. You see it's still loose. Now we're going to, of course, tie in these bolts down on the actual frame. I can't find my ratchet. I don't know where I left it at, but we're gonna do this, and then we're going to mark the holes, because you got to drill that out. So we've been modifying this bracket quite a bit. Alright, this whole fairing thing. I also noticed one of the mounting holes was off quite a bit, so I had to re-drill the hole on the actual fairing. So yeah, we've been very, very busy with this. So man, I wish I could find that ratchet. Go ahead and chipper. So then this would be like pretty much the final step. We gotta install this after we put the fairing in. You just have to be a little careful you don't scratch your paint, but I mean, it's underneath the fairing. Nobody's gonna see it anyway, so I guess it really doesn't matter. But you know, just be careful, I guess, putting this thing inside, because you got to tilt it, you got to squeeze it inside, because it's, of course, it's fixed, so you can't, you know, you have to tilt it. You got to put it in an angle, because it goes underneath. So unlike the Dominator that goes right here, this one goes on the inside for some reason. I guess to clean it up, that would clean it up, wouldn't it? The look. So there we go. We're starting to get close. Feels like we're getting pretty tight. So you see, I was able to just buy a little bit more room here. I'm able to kind of put this all the way up against the frame. It used to fit out here more, so I was able to kind of just squeeze this in there. So looks like I could probably just shave off a little bit more, because it's not, you know, sitting flat. But like I said, we also went ahead and drilled out the top piece as well, so I think we should be okay. Alright, so let me just finish tying this up, and then I'm gonna push the fairing up towards the eyelets of the bottom bracket, and then I'm gonna mark some holes, and then I'm gonna drill out the bottom of here, so we could put these last bolts, and that's pretty much it. That's the end of the install. All right, so we're just drilling the holes. You guys can see I already did one side. There's a lot of play underneath the thing on the bottom. The bottom bolts, they have the whole slotted landscape, so there's play to adjust it left and right. So what I went ahead and did, of course, I just tilted the fairing kind of like how the bike's sitting. So I figured I'd do that side first, the right side, because it's, of course, leaning to the left. And then I'll go ahead and, you know, do my second hole. You can see where I have my pencil mark right there. You see that little black dot right there? So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing. As far as the forks, they still don't have enough clearance. I mean, it's still very it touches the bracket on the bottom, so you can see right there. You see how it touches? I think I still have probably full tilt or very close, but you can see where it touches. Like I said, this bracket is for a street bob. I don't know if they make one for the Lowrider S as of yet, but of course this used to come out all the way over here, but to get clearance, you know, we had to, you know, cut that out. So there's still a lot of, you know, play here, but it looks like I think this is the right spot. What I like doing is I like looking at the spacing between the fuel tank and the bottom of the fairing, just to kind of go off of that, just to see how you know that looks. And then this is pretty much like the final piece. Once you have this, you know, done, then that's pretty much it. And I think we're good there. All right, so we have the holes drilled. You guys can see everything's still semi-loose, but normally you do this before you paint, of course, obviously. You know, we are very close to the fork, to the bottom triple tree. We are extremely close. You guys can see just a hair, just a hair away from hitting the fairing. And yeah, this thing needed trimming. I trimmed off originally. I trimmed off 1/2 inch on the whole bottom, but I ended up trimming like an extra 1/4 inch. So if you wanted to be on the safe side, I would say just cut 3/4 inch off of the bottom fairing before you even install it, of course. So we trimmed off 3/4 inch now, and that just seems to be just barely enough, just a hair to kind of fit in there. So everything's pretty much installed now. You guys can see. Oh, I also went ahead and I added some auxiliary lights. You can see I did a little bit of JB weld. I tapered the carbon fiber pieces. We'll see how long it holds. Doesn't look pretty, but I like them recessed into the scoops. Some people they just drill it into the fairing so they stick out a little bit. I wanted them just a little bit inside. I didn't want them all the way outside, so that's why I mean, I could have pushed them all the way inside, but I wanted to be able to kind of, you know, adjust them and move them up and down and stuff like that. So I think they look pretty good. These are Nightlight. They're pretty much like the knockoff S2s. All right, so we have now installed the bottom bracket, and now we pretty much you know, just finished the install. Now we got to tighten up all these bolts, torque them down, and we're done. And then we just install the light, and that's it, guys. That's the install of the TCMT fairing. I will say it does sit significantly higher than the Dominator. I don't know if I'd like that look. Like I said, it's the bottom of the fairing is lined up with the bottom of the fuel tank. On the Dominator, this is where it kind of hugs. So I really like the way the Dominator sits on the bike. You guys can let me know in the comments. And of course, because of that, I am now going to have to use like a different clamp on my engine guard for my lowers. I'll be able to make it fit. We'll see what happens. I mean, I gotta figure it out. But right now, the lowers are pretty much hitting the crash bar. The way the fairing sits, and that's, you know, that's the issue, because it sits so much higher and it sits so much further away from the actual fuel tank. You know, like I said, it's about an extra 4 inches away from the tank, and it's about 3 inches taller. So if you have bars that are, you know, shorter than 14 inches, you are going to have some clearance issues, even without the windshield. You know, if this thing was stock height, I doubt you'd be able to turn it full tilt, because your handlebars are going to hit the fairing. So let's go ahead and finish this install, guys. You know, as far as the headlight, of course, use the headlight that you're going to be doing. This is the LP6 bracket, so that's the one I'm doing. You guys can see I have zip ties because I do have a carbon fiber amp bracket on this thing. So you guys would have to see the playlist, the FXRT playlist, I did some updates, so we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, like I said, I can't use the speaker pods anymore here. So let's go ahead and finish the install, tying this up, tying the bottom, and then you're done. You install your headlight, you put in your headlight cover, and then your windshield. That's it, guys. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching yet another video. Life's risky, out there and ride. Later.